It was a Monday night in November, and Amy Winehouse was freezing. Not just the kind of cold that makes your teeth chatter, the kind that seeps into your bones and settles there, making every breath feel like inhaling ice. She stood under the brick archway near King's Cross, her acoustic guitar propped against her shoulder, her fingers moving across the strings, even though they hurt. Numb fingers. The kind of numb that comes from standing outside for 4 hours straight in London drizzle. She'd been playing the same 3 songs on rotation since 6 o'clock. Autumn Leaves, All of Me. A bluesy number she'd written herself but never told anyone about because it felt too raw, too honest. The kind of song that made you vulnerable, and vulnerability wasn't something Amy could afford. People passed her constantly, hundreds of them. Office workers with their collars turned up, tourists checking their maps, couples with locked arms hurrying toward dinner reservations. Some glanced down at her. Most didn't even slow down. One woman threw a pound coin without breaking stride. An old man smiled, but nobody stopped. Nobody really listened. Amy's voice wavered on the high note of Autumn Leaves. She heard it, that tiny crack in her tone, the moment when confidence fails and doubt takes over. She pushed through it, but the damage was done, in her mind anyway. That little break meant something. It meant she wasn't good enough. It meant she should go home. It meant she was wasting her time. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Back home, her mom told her she had a gift, a real gift. Said it the way other parents said their kids were clever or athletic, like it was a fact, not an opinion. Her dad used to sit in the living room with his jazz record spinning, listening to her hum along to Ella Fitzgerald, nodding like he recognized something in her, something special. But standing there under that archway, with her fingers numb and her voice cracking and practically nobody noticing she existed, that gift felt like a cruel joke, like someone had told her she could fly and then forgot to give her wings. She finished All of Me. And there was that moment, the pause between songs where silence feels louder than sound. She usually filled it by resetting, tuning, preparing for the next number. But tonight she just stood there, holding her guitar, thinking about how tired she was, how her feet hurt, how her voice sounded wrong in this cold, how she was 18 years old and already starting to believe that maybe everyone was wrong about her. That's when she heard him. Play that again, the last one. Amy looked up. There was a kid standing in front of her. Maybe 11, maybe 12. Skinny. Wearing a jacket that was too big for him, like he'd borrowed it or found it somewhere. His hair was wet from the drizzle. He had the kind of face that looked like it had seen too much already. Not sad exactly, but serious, watchful. The last one? Amy asked. Her voice came out uncertain, which annoyed her. Yeah, the boy said. All of me. He was still, completely still, not fidgeting, not checking his phone, not looking around like he was waiting for something better to come along, just standing there, waiting. Amy wasn't sure why she did it. She could have just launched into another song, checked her takings, started packing up. But something about the way he'd asked made her comply. She repositioned her fingers and started again. This time she didn't rush it. She let the melody breathe. She didn't try to impress anyone because there was nobody to impress, just a kid in a borrowed jacket standing in front of her in the drizzle. She sang about giving everything to someone and how it wasn't enough, about the desperation of love, about wanting to matter to someone. Her voice didn't crack this time. When she finished, the boy was quiet for a long moment. Amy felt her anxiety spike. He was going to say something mean, or worse, he was going to walk away without commenting at all. But he didn't do either. You sound like you mean it, he said simply. Amy blinked. Mean what? The song. You sound like you're not trying to sound good. You just sound. He paused, like he was looking for the right word. Real. It was such an ordinary thing to say. Not flowery, not flattering, just a statement of fact. But Amy felt something shift inside her chest. Something tight loosened. Most people who do this, the boy continued, gesturing vaguely at her guitar, they sound like they're performing, like they're thinking about whether people like them while they're singing. But you weren't doing that on that last one. You were just there. Amy didn't know what to say. She'd been expecting criticism or indifference, or maybe a compliment wrapped in pity. Not this, not someone actually seeing her. "I'm James, by the way," the boy said. He stuck his hand out. Amy shook it. His palm was cold and slightly damp. He had the grip of someone older than his years. "Amy, well, Amy," James said, "you should keep singing, not like, keep this up." He gestured at the archway. "Keep singing because what you're doing, that real thing, that matters. There's a lot of fake in the world. You're not fake." Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled 5-pound note. He placed it in her guitar case and walked away, back into the crowd of commuters, disappearing almost immediately. Amy stood there. Her fingers weren't quite so numb anymore, or maybe she was just noticing other things now, like the way the streetlights made everything look like a movie, like the taste of rain, like the fact that her voice had carried down this street and actually reached someone. Actually meant something. She played for another 2 hours that night. Her fingers hurt, but she didn't stop. Every time she wanted to give up, she heard James's voice. "You sound real." She never saw him again. Not that night, not the next week, not any of the nights she came back to that same archway, hoping maybe he'd return, wanting to ask him how he knew what to say, wanting to ask him why he stopped when nobody else did. But she thought about him constantly. She thought about him when she was writing songs in her tiny bedroom, when she was auditioning for bands and getting rejected, when she was telling people she wanted to be a singer and watching their faces shift into that expression of polite skepticism. She thought about what he'd said. "You're not fake." Years passed. Real years, with real struggles. Years of playing small clubs and being told she didn't fit the mold. Years of people wanting her to be something other than what she was. Softer, or harder, or more commercial, or less honest. Years when she questioned everything, but she never quit. And she never forgot that kid in the borrowed jacket who taught her that someone could listen, really listen, without needing her to be perfect, without needing her to be anything other than real. By the time Amy was 23, things had started to shift. Her album was gaining attention, radio stations were playing her songs. She was getting offers, real ones, from real producers. She was becoming the thing she'd always wanted to be. And it was terrifying and thrilling and nothing like she'd imagined. It was during an interview, one of the early ones, that she mentioned the boy. She was talking about where the music came from, how she learned to trust her instincts. And she just told the story. The cold night, the archway, the kid who stopped and listened and said the most perfect thing. The interviewer asked his name. Amy said she didn't remember. James something. Couldn't describe his face clearly anymore. It had been so long. Just remembered the seriousness of him, the way he really paid attention. Months later, an email appeared in her inbox. The subject line read, "I was the kid at King's Cross." Amy's hand shook as she opened it. His name was James Caldwell. He'd seen the interview online. He'd been working in a care facility for troubled youth for the past few years. He said he remembered that night very clearly, clearer than she probably did. He said he'd been having a terrible day. He'd just been kicked out of his house. He was angry and scared and wasn't sure how he was going to survive the next week, let alone the rest of his life. He wrote, "I was planning to do something stupid that night. I'd already decided, but then I heard you playing and something about the way you were trying so hard to be real made me stop and think. If you hadn't given up, even though nobody was listening, maybe I shouldn't give up either. Your voice saved me that night, Amy. I want you to know that." Amy read the email 3 times. Her vision got blurry somewhere around the second read. She wrote back immediately. She asked to meet him. She wanted to hear the whole story. She wanted to understand what he meant. They met at a cafe near King's Cross, not far from that archway. James was an adult now, mid-20s, serious in that same way, but softer somehow, gentler. He worked with kids who'd experienced trauma, helping them find their voices in different ways. "I went into that work because of you," he told her over tea. Because you showed me that vulnerability was a strength, not a weakness. That being real mattered more than being perfect. I help kids understand that now." Amy started crying. She couldn't help it. This boy, this kid who she'd thought about on and off for 5 years, who she'd never expected to see again, had built a life around a principle she'd tried to give voice to in that cold November night. "You changed my life," James said. "But also I changed yours, maybe. A little bit." "No," Amy said. "You changed it more than you know." She invited him backstage at her next show. He brought 2 kids from the care facility with him, teenagers who were skeptical about everything, who didn't believe anyone cared about their stories. Amy sat with them before the performance and told them why she sang. She told them about standing in the cold with nobody listening. She told them about a boy who heard something real and believed it mattered. When she performed that night, she thought about that archway. She thought about the moment her voice had cracked and how James had asked to hear it again anyway. She thought about all the people she'd doubted herself in front of, all the times she'd been told she needed to be different. And she sang like she meant it. The 2 teenagers came up to her after, hesitantly. One of them said, "I write poetry, but I've never shown anyone because I thought it wasn't good enough." "Show someone," Amy said. "Show everyone. Don't wait for permission to be real." Years later, when Amy had become the artist she always knew she could be, albums and Grammy Awards and sold-out shows, she still carried that memory. The cold night, the boy in the borrowed jacket, the moment someone believed her when she didn't believe in herself. She set up a foundation for at-risk youth. James ran it with her. They provided instruments to kids who couldn't afford them. They created safe spaces for young people to find their voice, musical, artistic, literal. They named it after that archway, that place where everything had changed. And whenever young artists came through, scared and doubting themselves, Amy would tell them the story. Not because it was inspiring in the Hollywood sense, but because it was true. Because vulnerability was a real thing, not a flaw. Because sometimes all it took was one person actually listening to change everything. Because sometimes the greatest gift you could give someone wasn't praise or money or opportunity. It was the simple act of stopping, of really hearing them, of believing that their realness mattered. On the anniversary of that night, Amy and James returned to the archway. It looked smaller now, dirtier maybe, but when Amy stood under it with her guitar, the air felt the same, cold, alive, waiting. She played All of Me, just once, just for him. When she finished, James smiled. "Still real," he said, and that was everything.